Yes. Okay, so if you don't have doubts, then let's start with CUR decomposition, and then maybe later on we can come back and we can discuss other doubts or other things in the process. So let me just start with this. Yeah. So we have seen random projection, we have seen singular value decomposition, and this is CUR decomposition because there is a C, there is a U, and there is an R. Okay. So CUR decomposition, um, yeah, the motivation goes as follows. The SVD works in the following way, that the projection onto subspace is specified by the singular vectors or eigenvectors of the symmetric correlation matrix or co-occurrence matrix. CUR decomposition is, instead of projecting onto singular vectors, you choose actual rows and columns to specify the subspace for projection. And the whole idea is it is very expensive to compute the singular vectors, especially for large data. Can we instead simply choose some rows and some columns and project on them? Because then we don't really have to compute in that way, right? So let's see. So a CUR decomposition of the matrix A is defined as ACUR, just like ASVD was U sigma V transpose. ACUR is CUR such that the norm the norm A minus ACUR is small. All right. Okay, such that ACUR is very close to my original A. Obviously, as you can see by the dimensions of C, U, and R, that ACUR is also an M cross N matrix, just like the original matrix. So their norm has to be small. That is the idea. Okay. So also the goal is a computationally more efficient alternative of SVD, even if we have to sacrifice the quality slightly. Okay. So how do you go about this? Obviously, if CUR decomposition is SVD, then our C would have been the U of SVD, U would have been the sigma of SVD, and R would have been the V transpose of SVD. Instead, we will do something else here. So let's see what that is. So let's say given a matrix A, which is M cross N, we'll fix K just like our K rank or low rank K or whatever. So we'll fix some K, that is the number of concepts. Okay, and then define C is a set of randomly chosen K columns of A. Okay, and R is the set of randomly chosen K rows of A. Okay, so first of all, what does this mean? So C is a set of randomly chosen K columns of A. The intuition is random representatives from the data. So K random representatives from the data. Each column is a data point. So you pick K random points from there. And R is a set of randomly chosen K rows of A. That means instead of your all M dimensions, you simply choose K random dimensions. And then we'll construct U in the following way. We'll compute W to be the intersection of the K chosen columns and the K chosen rows. So something like this in the picture. So suppose your whole matrix is this, right? And then these are the three rows, the dark ones, the dark gray. These are the three rows randomly chosen. These are the three columns randomly chosen. Suppose K is equal to 3. then W will be the intersection, the blue cells only. So it's a 3 cross 3 matrix, which is W. Okay, so that's the blue cell. The blue cells will will essentially give you a 3 cross 3 matrix here, right? So that is K cross K. So this is W, and then we compute SVD of W. Okay, compute SVD of W, and let's call that X sigma Y transpose. Now note that since K is a small number, I mean much smaller than M or N, okay, K is picked by us, right? So we can choose K depending on our computational capacity. So K is a small number, so SVD of W, that computation is easy. So SVD of W is, suppose that is X sigma Y transpose. Then we'll compute the sigma, pseudo inverse of sigma, that is essentially just all non-zero entries of sigma will become 1 by sigma. So that is a pseudo inverse. It's a diagonal matrix anyway, right? So it's a square, singular value decomposition of a square matrix W. So sigma is completely diagonal, and so sigma plus is a pseudo inverse of sigma. And then we define U to be Y sigma plus square X transpose. So then our CUR, the product CUR, is C equal to K randomly chosen columns, R equal to K randomly chosen rows, and U equal to this complicated, after this complicated process, whatever we have computed. Now, nature wise, what are the striking differences between the decomposition U sigma V transpose of SVD and CUR here? By nature wise, I mean, how do the matrices look different? Okay, so suppose if you, just a moment, I will share the screen in a different way so that I can show you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this you already did, right? Yeah. So what is the difference between, let's say, this way of doing things, right? So A equal to U sigma V transpose and A equal to C U R, right? So these are obviously, as you can imagine, these are, I mean, this U is not this U. So how does U look different from C, sigma look different from U, and V transpose look different from R? Anyone?
Sir, are you writing something?
Oh, can you not see?
No, no, we can't see it. We
Oh,
just
wait.
see the
Sir,
slides.
we can see that on the slide.
Yes, sir, I can see that.
Oh, so it's just a moment then. Hold on. So, oh no, something is wrong. Hold on. Let me reshare. Okay. If I try again. So you see the slide, right?
No, sir.
Oh, you don't see the slide. Oh, no. Sorry. Yeah, now you see the slide.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Now let me write again. Okay. So now I'm writing something. Let me write in dark color. Okay. So now if I write here, so now I'm writing A equal to U sigma V transpose. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now also write A equal to CUR. So my question was, how does U look different from C, sigma look different from this U, and V transpose look different from this R? Any, I mean, very high level visual difference that comes to your mind? Okay, so that's fine. So let's explain. A is a very sparse matrix, right? I mean, that is, of course, we haven't mathematically said it. It doesn't have to be mathematically a sparse matrix, but usually A is a very sparse matrix. And when we did singular value decomposition, what did we get? We got sigma to be a diagonal matrix or diagonal like matrix, so which is very sparse. U and V were not sparse. Here, C randomly chosen k columns, so that is sparse. R randomly chosen k rows, that is also sparse. U, however, well, this W is sparse, but then you do singular decomposition, you take sigma. So up to this much is what it was sparse, but then you multiply this, right? So U is not sparse. Okay, so there is a bit of difference between mm, CUR decomposition as SVD by nature also. So let's yeah, so we'll come to that fine in the final discussion. So now what we said was C is a set of randomly chosen k columns and R is a set of randomly chosen k rows. Now the question is random selection the best? So if you simply you want k random representatives, is random selection the best? Can we do better than random selection? So then think like SVD. Okay, so you'll try to do it like SVD, but without spending as much effort as SVD. So what does SVD want to do? SVD wants to show you the important directions, right? And here also what we should try is we should try to select the important rows and columns first. How to do that? What should be a measure of importance? Well, one simple way is relative Frobenius norm of a row or column vector. So just Frobenius norm, but then relative basically means that, well, if one has a higher norm than another, then that one is more important. So Frobenius norm of the matrix is simply sum of the square of all the entries. And then for the ith row, the probability of that being chosen is, well, that the sum of the, I mean, Frobenius norm of that row by Frobenius norm of the whole matrix. So that is just the relative Frobenius norm, and similarly for the columns. So what do we do? If some rows and some columns have higher norms, we put higher probability of choosing them. So that doesn't mean we are only choosing the top, we are choosing the rows and columns with top norms. No, we're just computing the norms and then assigning a probability distribution based on the norms, and then we are doing a random selection. Okay, so this is what CUR decomposition is. Again, we will not go into how A minus A CUR is small, but the takeaway here is the matrix A is big and sparse. SVD is A equal to U sigma V transpose. U is big and dense. V is big and dense. Sigma is small and sparse. CUR gives you the opposite usability. C is big and sparse. R is big and sparse. U is small and dense. So dense is okay when you have a small matrix. If matrices are big, you better have them sparse. Now, you can actually, that's not your assignment, but you can actually try one thing. The movie recommendation notebook that we have created, you can try, instead of computing SVD, you can implement CUR decomposition and simply see, do the same thing, but you are already choosing a K upfront, so there is no dimension reduction necessary after that, right? So you're already choosing a K upfront. So if you are just trying to do the low rank approximation by filling up entries, right? So user to movie predicting ratings thing, then you are actually not doing a dimension reduction. You actually want a low rank approximation. So you can actually try this out. All right. So this is, yeah, not so popular. People don't really use it so much. SVD is much more famous, but this is also one nice and nice and fast way of getting results somewhat comparable to SVD in case computing SVD is kind of out of question. Okay, so that's the main point here. Okay, now let me ask you, are there doubts from previous classes and so on?
Sir, here in CUR, can you explain the construction of the U matrix again?
Yeah. Okay, so construction of the U matrix. So suppose these three are our randomly chosen columns, right? That is the C. So the C matrix is, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 cross 3. All right, so that is C. And R matrix is 3 cross 9, right? So these three rows. So then W is just the blue part. So that's a 3 cross 3 matrix, right? Then,
Yeah, okay, sir.
yeah. So then we compute the SVD of W. Suppose that is X sigma Y transpose, and W is a square matrix anyway. So this will be a, you know, K cross K, K cross K, K cross K all the way. Okay. So then compute the pseudo inverse of sigma, this sigma. Now this sigma is a diagonal matrix. So pseudo inverse is simply every entry you take 1 by that. Okay, so every entry you take 1 by that. Transform non-zero entries from sigma to 1 by sigma, and define U to be this Y sigma plus square X transpose. Again, this is just a 3 cross, I mean K cross K matrix only. They're all K cross K all the way. This is your U. U is the thing in the middle. So CUR.
Okay, sir. Here means the pseudo inverse is just we are dividing every non-zero entry means
Yeah, just
dividing
inverting
that.
the non-zero entries. That's it.
Okay.
It's also called, I think, Moore-Penrose pseudo inverse. Something like that. Okay. All right. So if people don't have any other immediate question, what I will do is we can come back to it later if necessary, and maybe we'll have a doubt clearing session on sometime before the next quiz. We will discuss all of that. Let me just, yeah, any doubt? Anybody?
Sir, by decomposing lights, you are why this helps us. I mean, we
Okay.
decompose.
So it helps us in the sense that, okay. So this, what is the goal of SVD? A low rank approximation of SVD. The idea is that after we do this AK, which is UK sigma K VK transpose, right? It is similar to the original matrix, but low rank, right? So the goal of CUR is also same. I mean, it can be proved. I mean, people have proved that A minus A CUR, that this thing is also small. So the norm of the difference between the original matrix and the CUR matrix is also small. So then you can think of this as an alternative to SVD, and whatever way you use the U of SVD, you can use the C here. Whatever way you use the R of SVD, you can use the R here, or if you want to use a low rank approximation, just use the ACUR. The advantage over SVD is this is way faster to compute, right? And you simply randomly choose K columns, obviously after assigning some probability distribution. Okay, so you simply have to compute the norms of every row or every column. That is not so much, just going over the matrix once. Okay, and then if your K is small enough, this SVD is very quick, right? So this SVD is very quick, whereas your dimensions M and N could run into thousands or even much hundreds of thousands. K could be like a 500. So this is very small. So computationally, SVD could be infeasible, but CUR decomposition is like always feasible. So that is the big advantage.
Sir, why didn't we take W as U? Matlab, can we take W as U? Why convert from W to U? Why go from W to U?
Okay, so I mean, I don't know the linear algebra details of this. If necessary, we have to read. But intuitively, you can see that that doesn't really work. I mean, that matrix will then become too sparse. So if you simply take W as U, W is also a very sparse matrix. You will essentially retain nothing, right? So your k randomly chosen rows and k randomly chosen columns uh, will be very sparse. So it can happen that you actually, I mean, essentially what happens is you don't get A minus ASUR to be the norm to be small if you just try to do it in that simple way.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So now what I will do is I will, okay, there is somebody in the similarity between two matrices can be best represented in the form of Frobenius norm of the difference of the matrices. No. So the people who came up with the CUR decomposition, they took that, right? So they took, okay, so am I being close to my original matrix? Let's take the norm. So that is one of the most straightforward ways of doing it. No, that simply doesn't mean that that is the best way, right? Because you may want that your column wise norms may be minimized, right? You may want more conditions depending on your application. All right, so now what I will do is I need two things. In fact, yeah. Okay, let me show you the okay, let me show you the assignment that I have set up, and let's discuss that because it's a bit involved assignment. So this will involve a lot of use of Spark and locality sensitive hashing. So yeah, okay, hold on just a moment. Instead, maybe what I will do is yeah, I'll actually share my screen altogether. Now, can you see the Safari screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what we want to do is we want to implement locality sensitive hashing, obviously exactly the way we did it in class, but there we took documents and we wanted to measure similarities between documents. We wanted to prune candidate pairs of documents which are probably very similar, right? So that was the goal. Obviously, we took shingles. So we converted the documents into shingles of words. So one document became set of sequences of words. So that's what we called shingling, and so on. And then we use Jacquard similarity and everything else. Here, what we will do, the data set, let me show you the data set first. So what I have done is I've simply downloaded some movie titles. Okay, so yeah, so it's just basically a list of movie titles from IMDb website. Okay, so it's a huge list. All right, now I don't know whether the total thing can be computed on our local machines and so on. So it has 7,270,000. Okay, so around 7 million movie titles. But then for fun, I also have a small one handmade, which is something like this. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to handcraft some movie titles which are very similar to one another. So you can see that, you know, here is we have Chupke and Chup Chupke, they are similar. Then we have Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, they are very similar.
So
King
just
Kong,
one
Yes.
Just
yes.
one question. How is Chukke Chukke similar to Die Hard? I
Not
mean,
to Chukke Chukke is not similar to Die Hard. I'm
okay,
just my ultimate goal is I have a lot of movie titles, and they will go into different buckets. The ones
okay,
which
okay,
go
okay.
into the same bucket should be my candidate pairs.
Okay.
Okay, so this is just a very small toy. Okay, this is what you should implement first, but then ultimate goal is we should apply that on a larger set. So let's. I just wanted to give you the intuition. That's why I created that handcrafted thing. So okay, submission instruction. This I may change a bit. I will actually have to figure out, but I'll send you the assignment file later this evening or so. But let me show you the things. The submission should be either some IPython notebook format or Python .py format. So you're working with the code should not really matter. So I'll tell you exactly how to submit later on. Now I have actually outlined steps. So first step is converting a string to shingles of characters, not words. So let's say Die Hard, then the shingling of Die Hard should be, okay, you convert them to lowercase, you remove the white spaces. Maybe we should also remove the non-word characters to make it better. But I know if you whether you do it or not, only the implementation will only differ a bit. Let's not bother about that so much now. So essentially all that you have to do, remove the white space. So Die Hard will then become one word, and then convert to lowercase, and then your three shingling of this one will be Die, IEH, EHA, HAR, and ARD. Okay, so you will have to implement this function. This is basic Python, so nothing really about it. And if you try this, of course, obviously I implemented this and deleted it. So this is the first one. Okay, that's the simplest one. I'll also give you marks. I'll also tell you how many points will be there for every part of the assignment. Obviously, this is a very simple one, so it's just a warm up. So then the next thing is generate the single item matrix from the whole data. Okay, so now what you are getting here is if you simply do this, every movie title, right? Every movie title is going to give rise to several such singles. So you're going to get a list of lists. I mean, if you have a list of movie titles, you're going to get a list of lists. So remember, we used flat map, and all those things. So just to remind you of about those. So now, first thing we will do is we need to give movie IDs, movie titles some IDs, because our columns are movies and rows are shingles. So remember our model, right? So our columns are movies, rows are shingles, right? So we need to give these movies IDs, D1, D2, or whatever. So IDs, right? So for that, obviously our data set doesn't come with IDs. Every line is just a text. So so once you load this on Spark, obviously this you will change the path. Then the first thing you can do is titles.zip with index. Okay, so I can actually show you how that works. So I can actually show you how that works. Okay, hopefully if I load this and this, oh no. Yeah, so then what you have is zip with index. Essentially every line gets a number. First line gets 0, second line gets 1, and so on. So now you have your automatic movie IDs. Okay, so this is the portion I have already told you. The rest you have to implement. So the rest will involve convert every word using the function above, string to shingles, and then output key value pairs and reduce or group by key in certain ways, so that your final your final output should be items by shingles, and the items by shingles should look like, okay, I will actually write that down for you. I'll do that later, but right now I can actually make it a placeholder. Okay, output should look like, you will have a shingle and then list of movie IDs. So the shingle die appears in movie ID 0, maybe movie ID 367, maybe movie ID blah blah blah, and so on. All right. So you will have basically a list of shingle and list of movie ID. Okay, so something like this. I will actually show you a real example of that from my code. Okay, so this will be your first step, that is use Spark. You will have to use map and reduce everything. Okay, and you will have to probably play around a bit to convert this into this. Okay. The next portion will be computation of the mean hash signature matrix. This is a bit more complicated. Now remember our code. Okay, remember our code that we will actually not use permutations. We will use simply hash functions, right? So remember that here what we did, the computation part, yeah, here. So here these are just hash functions, and we will use murmur hash or something for that, so which looks something like this. If you have 10, if 10 is your highest dimension, 10 is the number of dimensions, then you use mod 10. In our case, whatever it is, you use mod that, and so on. And this also you don't implement, you simply called mmh3.hash, give it a seed. I have shown that in Bloom filter for you. Now what is the next step? The next step, remember that for every row, now in our case every row is just, in our case every row is a shingle, and the shingles are not given IDs, shingles are just text. So for every shingle R or every shingle begin, we compute the hash values for n hash functions. Now n can be 20 or 100 or 50, you set it. Okay, so you compute h1 text, h2 text, and so on. So like every shingle can be like a die or a heart or whatever, so you compute that. Then for every column j, if that column has a 1 in that row. Now what does this mean? This means, in our case it meant that after permutation, if let's say after permutation, whether this column has a 1 in third row. In our case it means, does this movie contain the shingle, right? If not, it's a 0. If this movie contains if this movie title contains the third shingle, then it's a 1. Well, so in our case it's actually easier, because what we have shingle and list of movie IDs corresponding to that. So for every shingle, all the movie IDs that are in my list are actually ones. So for every shingle or every row, I actually have all the columns j for which j is equal to, when ij is equal to 1. That row rj, the jth column has a 1 in row r, right? So we simply have to iterate over, or we simply have to go through the list of movie IDs for every shingle. So for every shingle, for list of movie IDs, what we have to do, we have to update our signature matrix. Now here I runs from 1 to n, because the signature matrix will have a smaller dimension, maybe here 20 dimensions. So ij will simply update it to a smaller value if my hash value is smaller than the existing one, right? Okay. So that is the conceptual part. Now, so this basically means that we actually don't have to go through all columns and check whether it has a 1. We are already given the columns for which it has a 1. That's the advantage of the sparse matrix, or the way we have created this part. Okay, fine. So we will do this. Now comes the most important part. in your implementation, do not actually create a signature matrix in NumPy or whatever and try to update every entry of it. Instead, note that when do you update this? When do you update this SIG_ij entry? You update it when the corresponding hash value is smaller than the existing SIG_ij entry. That means for every row R and for every combination of this R and I and J, if you keep track of this HIR and then finally take the minimum of that, that is going to be your corresponding SIG_ij. So let me actually tell you that again. So note that for every one entry in the single ID matrix, so single ID matrix is the original matrix, row are the single IDs, movie IDs are the columns. So that is every ID corresponding to the single. The I.id, ID is the column, right? I is the SIG_ij is here is IID, J is the ID, movie ID. The corresponding IID, the entry of the signature matrix may get potentially updated. All you have to do is simply output the tuple I, J and HI of R. R is my row, that is the single, in another map. You output this and later on for all unique IID or IJ, you can take the minimum. So the final value of the IID entry of the signature matrix is the minimum of all such hash values obtained in the process. The minimum can be computed by another reduce. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to write a map and a reduce. Okay. So writing this in a single line will be very tedious. What you want to do is you want to implement an update signature function, which will take the single, the text, the IDs corresponding to the single. This you already have from the previous RDD, and the number n. I mean, if you are taking, let's say, 10,000 movie IDs, then that, because this you need for computation of your hash value, and then you compute the hash values for all your hash functions, and then you have to implement this here. So then you actually output all these tuples. Okay, so this tuple should be a list of, right? List of all such tuples should be appended to this min sig, and you return min sig. Once you have done that, you simply have to reduce by key and do a minimum of something like that, right? So now you have all the I, ID, HI single tuples for output by the map. So simply reduce to compute the minimum for every key. Okay, so this will produce a signature matrix in a sparse matrix representation. That means your signature matrix will also look like I, J value, I, J value, right? So it will also look like that. I'll tell you some more tips before that. Let me just complete the thing. And finally, you have to implement the banding. So now you can configure your number of bands. So here, for example, we have a few parameters. Our parameters are n, small n, the number of hash functions, band B, number of bands B, okay, and a similarity threshold S, right? So of course, we have to experiment how similar are the two movie IDs, let's say hero number 1 and Jodi number 1, right? So I mean, you can simply compute the Jaccard similarity of their shingling. Of course, the K also, right? So K is the width of the shingling. Are you taking 2 shingles or 3 shingles or 4 shingles or whatever? So these are the things you can play around a bit. So any movie pair which agree completely in their signature on at least one band should be output as candidate pairs. So finally, you should output candidate pairs where you should have pairs of movie titles or pairs of movie IDs or whatever. Okay, so something like that. So this is the whole exercise. I think around, if I give you this with a little bit of more instruction here and there, by this evening, another 2 weeks should be okay for this. I will strongly suggest you not to try to complete the exercise in the last 3 days. So because you will face trouble, and I think we will, in the whole course, we will give around 3 such assignments. I am a bit late to give you the first assignment, but we'll catch up. So maybe 3 such assignments, 10 marks each or something like that, 10 absolute marks each. Okay, so this is actually quite a lot of work if you're doing it for the first time, Spark and all. So 10 marks each. It is not clear whether the NSEM will happen in the usual way. So let's keep 40 for that and maybe 30 for the quizzes. So 30, 30, and we'll think about the other 40 if necessary later on. Okay. So any question immediately, or I have some more tips to give you here? Yes, somebody was trying to speak out. Okay, so look, let me tell you one thing. I have written things up. I have also explained you. So you can also hear the video later, but it is still quite okay if you still get confused about how should you do it. So even after the hints and so on. So what I will do is I'll strongly urge you that you try to do the assignment. So let's say today is 22nd of October, 31st will be 9 days and 5. Let's say 5th of November is our deadline. If it is, then try to give it a sincere effort by the end of October at least, so that then we can have a doubt clearing session and everybody can come to me and I can explain again if necessary, so that you can complete it. All right, so please do that. uh, and then before that, I'll just give you little bit of more tips here. Okay, so now just look at one thing. Titles.zip with index gives you already kind of key value pairs, and you have to apply map on top of it. Okay, so when you apply map on top of it, what you can do is the following. So let's say if we try.
Sir, in this output, what are the values?
I mean, this like a key and value, right? So it's like a pair of things already, right? So when you apply map, so it's a list where every element is a pair, right? And how does map work? Map applies some function on every element of the list. So the map is going to work on the pair and not on your single, text, right? So then what you can do is lambda x goes to, and suppose I simply want something to do with the text part, and let's say I do, and this I can do. Okay, so I can actually do this, and let's say I do x1, okay, and I simply do a collect just to show you what happens. Okay. Oh, I should have also. Will both work together? Oh no, both doesn't work together. So I'll have to do this. Okay, so essentially this tip is this is what you have. Your RDT right now looks like this, but if you want to apply map, then you can actually call. So every element of the list, suppose that is x, you can actually call them by index. The x0 means the string and x1 means this value. So you can simply see that die hard, this is a string of length 8. So I'm outputting 8,0 because my map is apply x to length of the first portion and then the value, right? Or I can maybe say something like this. So then square of the value or something like that, right? So you see, this is how you can manipulate. So it's not always the case that the element that you are applying map on is a single element. It can also be a tuple or a pair. You can actually access parts of the tuple in the following way. All right. I mean, this will be an essential thing for you, because you will have to use lots of tuples and things and key value pairs. So here, obviously, this will be your key, which itself is a tuple. You'll have to group by the key, and this will be your value, right? So your key doesn't have to be a single number or something, or a single text. Your value also doesn't have to be. So your value can also be a list. It's just that you will have to know what your key values are at every step. and all the things you will work on will be RDDs, right? Spark RDD. This is a Spark RDD. Titles is a Spark RDD. Titles.zip with index is a Spark RDD, and so on. So obviously, items by shingles should be your final items by shingle, where it should look like this. So I will actually give you this example separately somewhere here, just to show you that. Okay, any other question?
Sir, as here we are taking the k equals to 3, that is the 3 shingle. So we have to do this for means every shingle, like starting from 2, 3, 4. And
No. That's just so that's just a hyperparameter, right? I mean, k equal to 3. How many hash functions? That I mean, ideally you should put down all your parameters up here. Okay, maybe that's what the good suggestion. Maybe up here I will do that. Okay, I'll just define your parameters, and then I mean you can actually run it for. You can experiment a bit and see which gives you the most intuitive result, right?
Yes, sir. For means the larger data set, the length of the movie names will be larger. So
Also larger, and also there will be lots of movie names. So obviously, so another possibility. Okay, I'll just tell you another possibility here. Your personal laptops may actually struggle. So this is actually the. Okay, so this I am also setting it up on a Colab notebook. So also setting it on up on a Colab notebook, the same thing, but except that you have to run a few more things. This I will already give you. Okay, so you have to install Spark on a Colab environment, and then so that you can load the data from the Google Drive and so on. So I will set that all up for you, and you may also want to run it there. And remember that whether you want, I mean, depending on how I will tell you, you download the IPython notebook or the Python file, okay, to submit. All right. So don't worry if your laptop is not fast and so on, because yeah, it's like I think it will be better to run it on Colab. So some extra configurations are required, which I'll already give you. So I'll give you both the standalone Jupyter notebook and the Colab notebook, so that you can do it at your convenience. And then obviously, if it cannot run with all 7 million movie names, you can run with maybe, I don't know, 100,000, 500,000. That's also something to figure out. Okay, so how much can you run with? Okay, so that's also something to figure out, how the performance works and all those things. All right, anything else?
So I had a question from the previous day's notebook.
Okay, just a moment. Let me open that. Oh, I think the previous day's notebook is here. Okay, tell me.
So in that sparse matrix, when suppose RS is a sparse matrix and we do rs.shape0 and shape1.
Okay, so here, okay.
Yes, so rs.shape1 will actually give us how many unique items are there, and rs.shape0 will give us how many unique dimensions are there.
Right.
So I had actually ran this. Here we are using the smaller movie lens data set.
Okay.
So in the data frame, when I did movie ID unique, like number of unique movie IDs, the dimension was matching, but in the rs dot shape items, it was coming much more than the unique movies present in the actual data frame.
Oh, okay. So that's actually interesting. Shouldn't happen.
You can run this maybe.
I'll try that. I will try that. So maybe not now, but I will try that. So
Yes.
basically, what you are saying is, when
In
you
this data
actually,
frame,
when you ran it
ratings.csv,
on the data frame, the number of okay,
unique movies is much lower than the rs.shape1 items.
Oh, okay.
value.
Oh, hold on. Yes, of course, that can happen.
It can happen.
That can happen. I'll tell you why. See, suppose your matrix looks like 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 0 2 1 0 1 2 0 1. Now, what will your Panda data frame store? It will store, you have 1 1, so 1 1 and the value is 1. Then the next non-zero entry is 4. Okay, so not 1, so let's say 2, sorry, 0. So this is 0 actually, right? 0 0 0 starts from 0. So the next one is 3, so 3 0 and the value is 1. Your third one, and then this one is also one thing, right? So that is 3 2, the value is 1, and then we have a 4 1 and the value is 2, and we have a 4 2, no, 4 0, the value is 2, and the 4 2, the value is 1. Is that fine? So this is what your data frame will look like, right?
So what happened here did not follow. One of the column is movie ID.
This,
One of the column.
This is my matrix, the way we understand matrix.
Okay.
Okay. So I have 5 rows and 3 columns. The rows are from 0 to 4. The columns are from 0 to 2. Right? Okay. So this is my matrix. Okay. So I have 5 rows and 3 columns, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the row indices are 0 to 4 and the column indices are 0 to 2.
So in that sparse matrix format, it is that the one below.
Right. Now hold on. So now my data frame will simply give us this. It will only give us the non-zero entries, which means 0 0, that value is 1, 3 0, that value is also 1, 3 2, that value is also 1, and 4 0 is also 4 0 is 2, and 4 2 is 1. Right? So the data frame is essentially row, column, val, right?
Okay. So it's like CSR matrix only.
Yeah. Data frame, I mean, that's what it is, right? So data frame is essentially that. Now here, if you see the unique rows, you have only 3 of them. Because the rows which have nothing, the data frame doesn't store them. You shouldn't actually take the unique rows, you should take the maximum value of the row. That is your matrix dimension.
Okay.
So if your row or a column has no non-zero entry, right, then
it will work.
The data frame doesn't even store it. So when you do the unique, you are actually doing unique number of rows with non-zero entries, at least one non-zero entry.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so that is basically what is happening. However, one point is true that if a row, so let's say if a user has not rated anything, then the prediction system will not be able to personalize based on that user. It will just give something on average.
Generic.
Yeah. It is worse for a movie. If a movie has been rated by nobody, I mean, it's still okay if the user has not rated anything, right? The user's test can be near the average somewhat. Okay. But if a movie has not been rated by anybody, if a column is a completely zero column, then, well, the prediction system really cannot do much. I mean, the prediction system without any other information, without any metadata and so on. So obviously, as you know by now that any single method does not work the best. So obviously the Netflix challenge was won by some team which used SVD based movie recommendation system, a little bit more sophisticated version of what we did, but they did not use only that. So they used many other things also. So for any real system, you do not actually use only one algorithm, because only one way of capturing information and trying to predict based on that doesn't really work that well. All right, so but I guess you got the point, right? So just if not, then think about it once more. If necessary, write to me. I'll explain again.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So let me stop recording.